All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deborah Weiss. I'm director of the Workforce Science Project at Northwestern University. Thrilled to welcome you today to our session of Navigating People Analytics Careers, where we focus not only on careers, but how organizations are defining people analytics. We encourage you to engage fully. We have the chat open. Please, as Richard said, feel free to share your LinkedIn profiles and connect with the fellow attendees and drop questions in. I'm excited to introduce our moderator, who probably needs no introduction to a lot of you, Richard Rosenow. He's the VP of People Analytics Strategy at One Model, a key figure in the people analytics space, who in his copious free time does an invaluable service creating job listings, which I've shared in the chat for you to explore. He and One Model post them on their website, on the One Model website, and it's an invaluable resource. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Richard, who will introduce our guest, Ashish Peru-Laker, and I'm sure you'll find it an exciting discussion.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you to the Northwestern Workforce Science Project. This series has been incredible. It's been a lot of fun to meet people, chat with people, learn about everything going on here. If you're looking for any of our past series too, those are all hosted on YouTube, and happy to put a link to that anywhere. If you're hearing this, you probably know where you find it. So welcome to the series. I truly am excited for this one. So Ashish and I, we've been friends for a little while now. I met him down at the DC meetup. We've stayed in touch. And I think Ashish has one of the most fascinating roles in people analytics. So I'm excited about this as just about as much as anybody on the call here to hear what he's up to, what he's going on, and what he has to share. And I know it's going to be an incredible conversation. So Ashish, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, let's kick off at a good spot. So Ashish, you're the Director of Data Science, Head of Intelligent Talent Acquisition over at Amazon.
Yes.
From what I gather, you have a team of 400 plus data engineers, scientists, product managers. It's an unreal organization. So I know everyone on the call is super excited to hear about that, but we'll pause at that for a second because I'd love to hear about your career path. How did you end up here? Did you expect to end up here?
Yeah.
Could you tell a little bit about some key moments that got you all the way from where you started to where you are at Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely. Did not expect to end up here when I did electrical engineering and then data science. But I would say it's been a great journey. I started off with the data science and analytics space in financial services, switched over to product, and then switched over to people analytics. And really, it's been the key driver was mentors. So I had like 3 mentor conversations that have driven like 3 big moves. And I'll talk about one, which is the move to people analytics. So for 10 years, I thought, okay, product is where I want to be. I like building tangible things. It could be anything. It could be the best breakfast cereal, and I would be really happy to build that. And like a lot of people would be happy in the morning, and that would be great. So product is where I thought my passion was going to be. It helped me bring in analytics, customer focus, engineering, all in one place. And I was having a conversation with my mentor. I had 3 different opportunities and had pros and cons list, and I was trying to figure out like, okay, what should I choose? And she said, all these 3 opportunities are great, but I have to tell you, she's like, when I see sparkle in your eyes, it's really when you're talking about analytics and when you're talking about people.
It's a great mentor.
Yeah.
It's a great mentor.
And she's like, there's a job for that called people analytics. But she said like, hey, it's not even your job, but you're trying I was at Capital One at the time, and you're trying to change how we do hiring, and you're trying to change how we're doing performance management. And you're really passionate about these topics when you talk to me. There's a lot of energy. And I was taken aback. I would say my first reaction I'm very proud of. I was like, HR. I'm like, what? I'm in business. I can make direct impact, have resources to do it. And you're telling me I should go to a support function. But I respect her a lot. So I did some digging, and more I learned, more interested and excited I got. And in fact, I've written an article on why people should consider a career in people analytics. But a couple of things were like one, it's a very mission-driven space, right? You're making direct impact on people. Topics like fairness go deep with people, and talent has such high leverage. If you do good things there, it can help the whole world. And the other part of it is how much you can move the needle. I know there are a lot of people working very hard in people analytics space, but I see our still field still in the nascency stage. And we will talk about some of the examples of work my team is doing, where you can dramatically move the needle in this space, and that is exciting, right? Versus being in another space where and like optimizing things around the margins. So took a leap of faith, moved to people analytics within Capital One, got some, one of my big questions was, even if you come up with insights, will people actually change? Will the decision makers say, yep, let's change our practices, or say, yeah, your data is all good, but I know better. Like my judgment of years of work, it's better. And what I found is that when you're in a company that is data driven, it is actually possible to drive large scale change. That was true at Capital One, and that's been true at Amazon as well. So that was really the time where I, validated, okay, this is what I want to do. And then, Amazon called and like, hey, we have 1.5 million people who work for us. Come help us out. And that was hard to turn down.
I can imagine. So I for one, I'm very glad that you did not go into breakfast cereal and that you've ended up in people analytics. Maybe that's a second career somewhere down the line, but make it
Sure.
make it a little further out. But I put your article in the chat for anyone that's interested there too. It's a fantastic article about the space, about growing in the space.
Mhm.
And thank you for writing that too. But you mentioned your team at Amazon. So could you tell us a little about what's your team accountable for, and how do you measure success of that team? Like what's the purpose, and how did you build there?
Sure. So intelligent talent acquisition, we are accountable for science and analytics for all of hiring at Amazon. So we hire hundreds of thousands of hourly associates. We hire tens of thousands of corporate employees each year. And the work we do has direct impact on our business. So if we don't hire the right people at the right time in the right location, people don't get their holiday packages on time, right? So the accuracy, we are playing with live ammo, right? So I think that's very exciting to work at that scale. And it has such direct impact to Amazon's core businesses. In terms of how we measure success, probably standard talent acquisition metrics like quality of hire, speed of hiring, fairness, right? Cost per hire. And I would say, like in the hourly space, there is another one, which is accuracy of hiring at a particular space on a weekly basis. So we require 95% accuracy in terms of at each location, how many people we need to hire and how many people did we actually hire. So that would be something a little unique compared to general talent acquisition.
That's fascinating. And there's something about that too, just the fact that you can actually measure success.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of recruiting teams, like we try to, we think about it, but just we might not have that end size to accomplish that, especially for unique or one-off roles or small roles here and there.
Yeah.
But the ability to actually measure success at Amazon is a selling point for the team. I think that's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And given the data we have, you can do more sophisticated science and measure the power of your insight, right? Like, does it actually matter or not?
That's fantastic. And we've talked about this a little bit too, but could you tell a little bit more about what is about Amazon that makes this role special? And the end size is definitely one of those things, but I'm sure there's a couple others too that really make this stand out.
Yes.
And what motivates your team to do this type of work?
Yeah. I'll start a little bit about what motivates me. So for me, being in this space, the mission is to minimize, I would say, guessing and bias in this space, right? So when I say guessing, you have 1,000 resumes for a job, right? You're not able to actually manually read 1,000 resumes. You pick a few to read and then move forward. In a way, I would call that guessing. A lot of hiring practices where, to your point, when we don't have insights to prove what works and doesn't work, we are going with best practices, we are guessing. And then there is bias. And, so we might think best hires only come from top schools. Best hires only come from other big tech companies. And there are all these beliefs people hold, and they get more pronounced when you have limited time to make decisions. And the space has worked that way for a long time, and sometimes that's the best you can do. But when you have data, you can do some myth busting, and you can use data to make better decisions. And the better decisions can impact lives of people and companies and eventually customers. So I would say that's the motivation for me. Specifically at Amazon, I think, as you called out, because we have the sample size, you can measure almost every decision we make. We also have technology support. So we have built a lot on AWS, which helps a lot. We have investment, the 400-person team, right? The company is investing in this space, which is tremendously helpful. And I would also say one of the fascinating things at Amazon is you get to work with tremendously talented people who are really fired up. I haven't had to motivate a single person. Usually, as a people manager, motivating people is a big part of your job.
Yeah.
I don't have to motivate people on my team, which is very energizing place to work in. And the final thing I would say is this is one of the few teams that spans across all of Amazon. If you think about, we've got stores, we've got AWS, we've got Prime, we've got groceries, pharmacy. It spans across everything. So it's a unique vantage point to be able to understand what's happening and impact everything at Amazon. So those are some motivating factors for my team.
Yeah, that's a fascinating takeaway too, just across very different businesses or very similar businesses too, but just that common thread of we all have to find the people, we have to bring the right people in, and we have to make sure we're bringing the right people in. And to have that be such a core strength for Amazon with the team you've built and the organization you've grown, I'm reflecting a little bit on a team of 400 kind of doesn't come down from the mountaintop out of the blue. That's a lot of work over a lot of years to get there. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the growth over time and just how did it get to where it is today?
Yeah. So Amazon has largely a two beats a team mindset, a single-threaded ownership. So usually a line of business would have everything that they need, or even a small domain would have everything that they need to make their decisions and take action. So my current team used to be 26 different teams just 2 years ago, right? And they're organically grown across the company in many different ways. And the company goes through cycles of when decentralization or centralization makes sense. So this is one place we chose to centralize to take the advantage of the data we have across the whole company and learn things and operate at scale versus operate in silos. And there is benefits to both. It's just that we were at a place, and just to give you a sense of history. So in our hourly hiring, for example, about 6 years ago, we used to hire people through agencies. We didn't have a team internally to hire. And we decided, hey, this would be a good time to drive that transition to hire in-house. The first year, we had to double the amount. So the first year you're doing this, you have to double the number of hires.
That's incredible.
Over the next 3 years, it was 6x the number of hires we had to make, right? So it's phenomenal what people were able to accomplish. But that was built in a very decentralized fashion. You had to move fast, right? And then when I joined, it was really coming to a point where centralization could drive more benefit from standardization, learning and sharing insights across the whole pie versus knowing things in silo. So then we drove the centralization move. It helped in the hourly space, and then that drove centralization in the corporate space.
That's incredibly fast to pull that together. And I love hearing about the history there. You mentioned a couple of the projects. Could you dive a step deeper and share some of the projects your team might have worked on across maybe hourly or corporate, or we'd just love to hear a little bit more detail there.
Happy to take one example from hourly and one from corporate.
Yeah.
And I forgot to mention, like, I think probably the number one driver of like working at Amazon in general is you get to solve the most complicated, complex problems that also have big impact. So I'll give a flavor of that. So in hourly hiring, let me just set up like what do we have to do? We have 3,000 plus locations around the world. Each of these locations on any given week could tell us that, hey, they need 5 hires. Next week, they might tell us, I need 223 hires. The week after that, I need 37 hires. A site next to it might say 250 hires, 49 hires, and 125 hires. So you have these unique 3,000 plus strings of demand of how many hires we need. And that directly impacts how quickly and reliably we can deliver packages to customers. We get about 3 weeks of heads up on how much demand we need to fill at each location. And we need to be, as I said, 95% accurate in doing this. And, we are doing this at the scale of tens of thousands of hires. To make it even more fun, there are 16 different levers or dials I can move to get a particular number of hires in a particular space. I can change marketing. When do I start marketing? When do I stop? How much? Which channels? I can tune the funnel. How many jobs do I show? How often do I show them? When do I take them down? I can offer hiring incentives. There are 16 different things I can do. So now you've got 3,000 sites that are asking for their unique demand. It changes all the time, and I have 16 dials, right? Now, as I've told you about the growth story, this was done with human judgment to get to the 6x growth. So let's take marketing. We had 300 marketing experts sitting in each of media markets telling us like, hey, this is how much we need to spend, when to start, when to stop, what is the channel strategy, and so on and so forth. And we didn't have stored data for like how are they making decisions, what's working, what's not working. We are using expert judgment. So the first year we invested in actually like setting up mechanisms, and a lot of the times a big mistake people make is like investing in data. You can get distracted by shiny AI stuff, but it's only as good as the sensor you have, the reliability of data. So the first year we really invested in capturing all the data, understanding from our experts, how are they making decisions, capturing those into rules, and then getting those rules standardized in small part of the network and say, okay, is this performing better than other parts of the network, and growing that gradually, growing that internationally. And just that alone, turning human judgment into rules, not that we eliminated human judgment entirely, but whatever we could codify, we did, that cut our costs by 50%. So when you talk about moving the needle, right, at Amazon scale, and in 2 years, we were able to reduce the cost by 90%, right? So we went from rules to ML.
That's incredible.
By 90%. And at the same time, again, like 2 years ago, our accuracy of filling, hey, how much do you need and how much am I giving you at a particular site in a particular week, was about 80% accuracy. And this year we have 97%. Right? So when I say moving the needle, there are things you can do in marketing space in lots of companies. But maybe if you would join marketing in the early 2000s, you were moving the needle like this. And here in people analytics, you can do that even today. And in fact, like our marketing team got a couple of awards for a couple of general marketing awards for this work. So it's been really fun.
I can imagine. And Ashish, one of the things I want to just call out and I appreciate is your respect for the word human judgment is there still too.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm hearing kind of as you're talking about this, and as you're speaking about it, sometimes we can say like we use data, we didn't go by our gut, and the gut becomes this like pejorative.
No.
But it's there's a time and a place for human judgment, and if we can augment and scale and still use that in some places, it's incredibly important.
Absolutely.
But having that machine to be able to access that and to do it in the right ways is critical. So I just want to call out how much I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Our right a lot is a leadership principle at Amazon, and it's all about judgment, right? But I think the way we look at it is, are we freeing people to do their work on where human judgment and human touch is required, versus and like taking away the administrative burden and like clicking buttons kind of work. I think that's a big part of it. And then there are things that are hard for a human. I think about it as like data point of one, right? Like you are one person, you've seen something, and you're making best of what you see. But machines can see across the whole network, right? So if you could have access to that whole data and could comprehend it and had the time to really walk through it, maybe you get to the same decisions. But because machines can look at and learn from the whole picture, sometimes you can drive some standardization of decisions, which can be myth busting in some ways, right? But I don't think it can ever be 100%.
And we're getting a couple questions in the chat. Everyone, please keep the questions coming. I'm tracking those for around the 45-minute mark. We'll switch over to do kind of Q&A. But there's one question here that I think might be helpful. Could you dive just a step deeper into the people analytics around how you moved the needle on accuracy? Was that through certain, maybe not to the technique level, but if it helps to kind of talk just a little bit more about it, I think people would love to hear.
Sure. So I think the number one thing is to do system thinking, right? So one of the challenges we had is we had a marketing department, we had a funnel conversion department, we had an incentives team, we had like each of these teams, right? And they would see the same risk. I'm like, hey, there is a gap in how much we need at this location, and we are not likely to get that. But each team was trying their best to pull the lever they had to fill that gap, right? And now you can see how you could overinvest, you could underinvest, you could overshoot, undershoot, when you have one thing at a time, right? So one of the first step we did was set up, at Amazon, we set up mechanisms to give full visibility of the picture, right? And in that, sometimes you can get overwhelmed by like, oh my goodness, there are 16 combinations of how I can move these levers. And just like, your head can start spinning, like how many different ways I can solve this problem. So you really need to simplify and say, hey, I understand this much. Based on what I know, what is the best foot forward? What can I do today that is better than yesterday? So we stepped through that process, keeping the system picture in mind, keeping the North Star in mind, but not letting the best be the enemy of good, right? So we had these mechanisms running in Excel first, right? We went from humans making decisions in silo to one Excel where all the humans are coming together, getting the full picture. Then we turned those into rules, and then we turned those into products. Then we added science underneath it. So there was degrees of sophistication over time. And this is one of the great things at Amazon. We're not afraid to put stuff out there, right? Move fast, get things in the market. You can make mistakes, and that you have license to make mistakes, even though it's not perfect. But that's how you can actually get better sooner.
Yeah, Ashish, that's incredibly powerful, because I was maybe expecting you to go down the technical lever. And I love that you brought this about, because I think what I heard was capture data, get full visibility, take one step at a time, don't let better be the enemy of good, and don't be afraid to act.
Yes.
And what a powerful set of lessons.
And those are the things that are going to be more applicable broadly when you don't have thousands of data points, right? If you do have thousands and millions of data points, then yes, we did media mix modeling when we had all the data in one place. We had, one of the interesting things we were able to take advantage of was, because of human judgment-based decisions, we had thousands of natural experiments running, right? So in this context, when doing something different can get people their packages on time versus not, driving an A/B test where I'm doing something suboptimal is hard to sell to my operators, right? But we were able to take advantage of natural experiments where people are doing things based on judgment. For the exact same situation, people were leading to different conclusions, and we treated those as tests to inform our models and try things, and do our testing with a synthetic test versus like a true A/B test. So happy to get into that, but like for most companies, I think it's going to be you don't have the scale, so the other lessons are probably.
That's incredible. We could run the clock on that one alone. So in favorite time, I'll shift around a little bit, but I am hurting as I move on from that question.
Yeah.
I think it would be fantastic to hear a little bit about the structure and functions of your team.
Yeah.
Because it's a unique team, a unique build, and it'd be great to hear how things are set up over there.
Yeah. So we are organized by domain. So if you think about candidate generation, candidate conversion, evaluation, so like kind of like the funnel would be the way. And there are some functions that cut across. So data is a function that cut across the whole. We have a risk management function which brings all these steps together into a final decision, which goes across. But most of our team is built by domain. And the idea behind that is over time you can build domain expertise and move faster. So that's and like you have again like the concept of two pizza teams. So for a particular function, you have all the resources you need to actually deliver. And our team has everything from data engineering that puts our sensors in place, organizes our data, makes it available for analytics and reporting, makes it available for science. Scientists then deliver insights that are productionized by software engineers and product to drive decisions automatically. So our marketing is pretty much automated at this point. It used to be like humans clicking buttons, and now it runs every day, automatically moves things up and down. And that was the example I gave you where for last peak, which is the Christmas shopping period, we had a surprise where we were tracking, we were going to need 40,000 hires in a given week, and we were told 3 weeks before that, hey, it's going to be 63,000.
Just an extra 23,000. Yeah. That's all.
And we were just able to move some dials and get those hires without even actually increasing our cost per hire, which is, when you have a shock like that, to actually deliver with the 95% plus accuracy without increasing costs is
that's a resilient system.
Yeah,
that's incredible. For sake of time, I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but it'd be great to hear about open roles too.
Yeah.
Because as you have such a team, if you're out there in the market looking for people, and this is for anyone on the call, if you've got referrals, if you've got people in the market, you can kind of send this their way, as well as if you're on the market looking right now. It'd be great to hear kind of what's going on at Ashish's team in terms of openings.
Yeah. So we have 15 different roles open. We are always hiring. This is also the time of the year where we are consolidating our plans for the next year. So we're getting funding for new concepts and things, so on and so forth. So last year around this time, we actually hired like 40 people in the last November and December. Right now we have 15 roles open. I would say the team needs both generalist and specialists. So PMT is a function where I would say it helps to have breadth. On a team like ours, yes, you need somebody who has the product discipline, but also needs to understand software, also needs to understand science. A lot of times we are able to find, especially at Amazon, we have tons of people who have great product, great software. But it's actually hard to find people who have great product and science. 3 altogether is actually quite phenomenal combination. So we've got some roles in that space. We're hiring machine learning engineers to productionize the 400 plus models we have running in production, driving day-to-day decisions. We are hiring in Gen AI space, our surprise, both on software side as well as science side. And we generally have roles open for data engineering and reporting roles. So those would be the main roles. Where we need deep specialists is probably in the science space. So just to give you an example, our assessment space. Last year we ran 6 million assessments. We delivered 6 million. So like when you're operating at that scale, we have assessments that span across 400 plus different roles, right? To build that kind of apparatus, you need deep expertise in selection, right? So I think our science space is probably more deep expertise in a domain versus some of the other roles are more generalists.
That's incredible. And just some kind of tactical questions for folk too. In terms of years of experience, sponsorship, expertise, could you hit just a couple of those? Are you looking for a broad range? Do you look for kind of like the experts out of the box? It'd be interesting to hear.
Yes. So we have roles across different levels. So we have entry-level positions to more senior level positions, which are 20 years plus. We do sponsor depending on the role, but especially in technical domains, we do. Yeah, I would say like if you have domain expertise in a particular space, I would say keep an eye on our roles. There'll be roles opening every so often. And I would also say like if you are on the business side and thinking about switching over, this is a good place for you to switch over because you have the data, you have the scale to be able to do some of the work you've been doing on the business side to try to bring those practices here.
That's really helpful. And so thinking about your team, just the breadth and scale and width of the team, how do you prioritize work across such a large scope?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So luckily, Amazon has really good standard protocol for this. So we all start with a 3-year plan so that we are thinking long-term and not just restricting to what's right in front of us. That 3-year plan is turned into a 1-year operating plan. That's what we are going through right now, working backwards from the customer. So our ultimate customer is our business. We're hiring for the business. Our stewards of that are the talent acquisition teams. So we work with the business and the talent acquisition teams to figure out what is going to be above the line, what is going to be below the line. That's how we form the teams, the 2 pizza teams, and what are they going to work on. And then we have it runs like a large machine. Like it runs very much like a large software engineering team would run. Like you have tracking of sprint level outcomes, and you have KTLO and so on and so forth. But I can also give you a context of an example, maybe at a smaller scale. So in the previous space, there was a part of my team was a team of 6 people supporting an organization of 10,000 people, and they were burnt out. They had 400 plus requests that they had served in the last year. The team was burnt out. The customer was not happy because like, oh, I asked for a simple thing. Why does it take so long? Because they don't have visibility that the team is working on 400 things. And one thing I was able to do was like, go to your biggest customer. So went to the CIO and said like, okay, based on all the work my team did last year, what did you do differently? And he couldn't answer a single thing. Like we are running our tech org the same way we did last year. Now this is risky as a leader, right? You could say like, oh, why do I need this team, right? So that is risky. So we said, okay, so we did nothing, so we didn't move the needle. What if we said we'll move the needle on 2 things, right? So I'm going to have 30% capacity on each of these 2 big things. I'm going to have 10% for, there's always the executive fire drill questions. And then I'm going to have rest of the things for my reporting and KTLO, right? So I'm going to say a no to probably 350 of your 400 questions from last year. But like they didn't move the needle anyway. Now this is a very risky way to do it, but the team was much better off focusing on the 2 big things. And at the time it was during the pandemic. So it was really about preventing our attrition and scaling our hiring. And the team was able to show that we moved the needle. We actually got more funding next year to add the third strategic priority. And we got rid of the 1,000 paper cuts. You get that, doesn't really like move the needle, but is also not good for your team's model. So maybe that's something helpful for broader people analytics space.
Absolutely. I think that's a really helpful end of your check-in. I agree. It's a risky move if you phrase it up the wrong way.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really powerful check-in to say, where do we move the needle? And if we didn't, let's change things for next year.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something everybody should be doing at the end of the day. But it's I think that's a powerful takeaway for folk.
Yeah.
So we're near the end of the kind of structured part of this, but it wouldn't be an interview nowadays without talking about Gen AI. So I would love to hear, I'm sure that Gen AI is doing some interesting things within your organization. And when it popped up, you guys were on the forefront of it. If there's anything you can share about how Gen AI is changing the nature of the team's work, how your team's leaning in that direction, it'd be fantastic to hear.
No, so I'll give some tactical example. So far, it's been really about minimizing administrative work or overhead kind of work. So if you can imagine, like, all right, so we talked about 6 million assessments across 400 job families, right? So somebody who's built actually assessments from scratch, I think your head is probably spinning right now, right? To do job analysis for 400 different jobs, create content, like create questions for each, it's massive amount of work. And if you add it up, it would be like decades of work to do. But we were able to, one, do system thinking, figure out how to break down these things into smaller components, and then use LLM to generate several versions of these things in a short amount of time. We cut down time as much as 80% in generating these questions. It's also very tedious work for our scientists to like do every step of the way. So we were able to like speed up and reduce overhead in that kind of work. We are doing a ton in the recruiting space, where there's a lot of admin overhead. And then freeing them up to really engage with the customer, engage with the candidate, and build that trust and help them navigate to the right role. So it's really about freeing up people to do the things that they're best at and delivering more from it. So that's really been the focus so far. I know technology is moving tremendously, and there will be new avenues going forward.
That's helpful. So maybe a question to end on here, as you're thinking, and this part of the segment, as you're thinking about candidates that might be interested in applying to roles on the team, kind of a two-part question. What's something that could help them stand out? And then do you have some advice in general for candidates too? But let's start with what is it to help someone stand out?
Yeah. I would say at Amazon, we truly live by the leadership principles, right? So if you're interested in Amazon, really go deep on the leadership principles. Ask yourself, is this truly you, right? Because if it is, it will be great. And if it's not, you may get in, but may not be super fun, right? So, a lot of companies have, things on the wall, right? But here we truly live by it. So it's a good self-selection mechanism, I would say. After that, I would say, depending on the particular role, the technical depth needed at Amazon is quite high. So we are builders, right? So if you want to like build things from scratch, you need to know, things in depth about your domain. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And the final would be thinking about scale, right? There are lots of times you can build a prototype that can work in this controlled environment with like a few hundred users. What we're talking about is a production level system that works on thousands and millions of users. So you have to do work that scales. You have to have system view of things versus a myopic view on a particular use case.
That's incredibly helpful. And maybe some advice in general for folk on the market right now as they're looking to break into people analytics, or maybe people that are in people analytics but looking for their next role. Do you have any advice for any job seekers out there?
I think in general, So the first time when I moved into people analytics, I took a sideways or maybe a step back, right? And there were a lot of questions around like, wait, sheesh, like what's happening, right? Like, are you okay? And I got a lot of job offers to come back to business, as if I needed saving, right? But it's a long-term bet, right? If you are on the ship that is on the upward trajectory, I think you can rise with the tide. So if you're truly passionate about it, I would say get in and start making a difference. When you are choosing where to work with, I would say it is super helpful to work at a company that has data-backed decision making in their culture. Because otherwise you're showing up a bunch of numbers and like people are just going to say, cool story, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And it's not natural in many HR organizations, but if the business operates that way, it can trickle into how HR works and TA works and so on and so forth. So I think the company culture is probably really important. And I would also say like pick the scale based on who you are, right? I'm not a 0 to 1 person. I think I heard your interview with Craig, right? Like he's a 0 to 1 person, right? And he knows what he wants to do. He wants to build. I'm not 0 to 1 person. I'm like 100 to 1,000%, right? So like the companies you're going to work on and what strengths you bring and what interests you bring, make sure that they are on the curve in the right spot, right? So if you have those combinations, it can help you thrive in that environment.
I think that's really thoughtful advice. I know there's a lot of times when people are looking at teams like, do I want to start at a small team or a large team with people analytics? But I think that data-driven culture of the company is probably a great advice for anyone that's new to the space that wants to kind of get involved. So thank you for that. And Ashish, thank you so much for this part of the portion. We'll be transitioning over to Q&A, but for anyone watching this on YouTube, come find us next time. Come over here live next time, because it's a lot of fun in the Q&A when we go off the recording and we dig into some other questions here. So thank you so much, Ashish.
Thank you.